Video in, but
Do
it
you
was
want a chair with arms?
a wee bit of a challenge.
All right, good.
Morning, Jack. Welcome.
Ken's already seated.
No cream, but I would have thrown that.
How about sitting next to Ken?
We'll just move.
No.
Yeah.
You're okay here? Consider
Yeah.
for the sound guy that's coming this afternoon, that I should have been able to do, but I forgot to do it.
Sure.
I can't see that, but I'll take it with me later on.
I have to remember what we're doing here. Oh. Wait a minute, I don't get to go swimming right now? Now, it's time to go swimming.
You're giving us money.
Have you been keeping track of our chapters as
Oh,
we go
yeah,
through them?
yeah, we've gotten in a couple times and almost finished them last night. And
Very good, very good.
Ridger, whoever did the summary, what a great summary.
Yeah, that was a good one.
It was a good one, yeah.
I have one in my
All right. So shall we open with prayer?
car.
Cadillac that my grandma used to call her.
Yeah.
Creator God, we thank you for the opportunity to once again gather here to consider the growth and development of your church in the so-called Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, where we're struggling to find points of light in everything that was happening. We ask that you help us to keep open minds on everything we're talking about, and we hope that everyone will feel free to express their thoughts about what's going on with this stuff. But we thank you for the ability of our poor brains to comprehend what was going on a long, long time ago. For all this, we thank you. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. Well, we have quite a story here. In the author's narrative, the 1200s that we've been talking about are basically a time of consolidation of power, especially by the kings in France and England and Germany as they start to exert influence over wider territories. And that's what brings us into this chapter about France. King Philip, I think it was, has been traveling around to various territories, as kings did in those days, to keep everybody in line. But he finally decides that Paris would be a good place to have his seat of power, so he moved himself and his court there. And he sends his young son, Louis, to an abbey on the north end of Paris, the Abbey of Saint-Denis. And the abbey is a special place because of Saint Denis, Saint-Denis, who was in the 300s or something, I think. He was sent to Paris as a missionary by the Pope, I think. But the Roman authorities in Paris didn't like him, and two other guys, and they chopped their heads off on the top of Montmartre.
Yeah.
Montmartre is named that because of this. It means the mountain of the martyrs. So anyways, old Saint-Denis is okay, I guess, with being beheaded, but he doesn't want to be buried there, so he leans down, picks up his head. And he walks 4 kilometers, I think it was, out to this Roman cemetery out of the north end, and says, here's where I want to be buried. So they do bury him there. And they build a little church, and the church becomes an abbey in later years. And that's where King Philip sends his son Louis to this abbey. Well, he develops a strong boyhood friendship with one of the other residents there, one of the other boys in the abbey named Suger. And time goes by, Philip dies, Louis becomes king, and his old friend Suger is still there, an important figure in the court, and an important figure because he's now the abbot of the abbey. So Louis is very intent on building his power as kings were in the area, and he needs to show his influence by building up the abbey, which will help him as against like the Duke of Normandy or something like that. So he gives Suger a bunch of money, and Suger starts building a church, which is a real wonderment, apparently with some of his own contribution to the architecture, but the idea being to let light into the interior of the church. And does a good job of it, finishes it up, but then the Bishop of Paris sees what's going on, and he sees Suger as sort of being a competitor for power in the area, so he decides he better build a church. So he starts building Notre Dame, which we all know on the Ile de la Cité in Paris, which is even grander in its architecture with its flying buttresses, lets in lots of light, rose windows and everything. If you haven't ever been there, you should. Now they've restored it after the fire a few years ago.
Fire. Oh, light. It brought in more light.
Exactly. Except it was something, what?
Yeah, I know.
5 years ago or something like that. But goodness knows we could use it, use the light in this century as well. Anyway, so they start building Notre Dame, and then King Louis decides to get into the building game. So he starts building the Chapelle. Saint-Chapelle, thank you.
He wouldn't, Bill.
Which is on the other end of the Ile de la Cité. And he lets in light like you've never seen. I don't know how many of you have been to Paris and seen the Saint-Chapelle, but it's mind-blowing. It's just amazing, the light that comes through these windows, which are floor to ceiling, all different colors. It's incredible. But he, in the decorations of the place, he has hardly any reference to anybody like the Pope or the Bishop or just himself, King Louis. It's his place, and the reason he's built it, supposedly, is to house the crown of thorns, which are being brought to Paris from Constantinople, which has just been sacked and burned by the Crusaders, as we heard last week. And by the way, this crown of thorns still exists. They moved it now to Notre Dame, I guess.
I think it's bad.
But it's all in a special case and everything. All the thorns have been picked off of it by souvenir hunters years ago, but it is supposedly the original crown of thorns. Leave it to you to decide whether that's true or not.
Yeah. Believe it or not. I will not decide that.
So, meanwhile, the king is also very intent on being a Christian leader, and so he gets interested in the Jewish Talmud, the Book of Laws, and he thinks that those are heretical and proposes burning them. The Pope tells him, no, don't burn them.
Just ban them, don't.
Ban
Yeah,
them,
just-
right,
yeah.
right. So, but the king ignores that and arranges to have them all burned. And right across the river there from Notre Dame. And that starts a period of a couple hundred years of this, of the persecution of the Jews in Paris. So there's your history from our new chapter. Anybody have any thoughts about this? How many have been to Paris to see this stuff? Yeah, I thought so, from what I heard before.
Grace, oh, yeah. I was just there last year after the Notre Dame had been reopened. The line on the block, but we waited. And, the authors described it, or got me reflecting on the role of architecture and building as a total sensory experience. And it seemed to be very intentional that a church did a number of things to appeal to one's senses. And the light, as Tim was talking about, just all this new introduction of light and colored light with the stained glass windows. And I guess to the south, right? That was the best light is.
That's where they put the New Testament story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the role of light and colored light, but then all the incense and everything else that was sprayed around, sprinkled around the church, and sound in terms of singing and the like. And when I was at Notre Dame last year, I got to experience all three, even in this modern age. It was a beautiful day, and the sunlight, particularly through that one great window, was streaming through. There was all kinds of incense being. A priest was going around with his censer and just all around the church, and there was a woman's beautiful voice singing. They have services going on all the time now, but the woman was singing in this acoustically wonderful way. So it was, even as I was just a tourist wandering around, I can't say I was in particularly religious frame of mind, even though there were a couple people near me that were crying, and literally just overcome with emotion. But there was this total sensory experience, thinking back on it.
That fire did raise a lot of emotions, and people from all over the world, including
Yes.
the U.S., contributed tons of money to restore it in a very short amount of time. They're still working on it,
Right.
but it's really an amazing project. Yeah, it is.
So what was the incense? When did that begin?
I think it was what we're gonna get into next
Okay,
week. I think it was
okay.
the plagues. I think it was meant to.
Oh, and that's to get the smell away?
Yeah,
Isn't it
or
make-
kill the, whatever it was causing the plague, I
Yeah.
think, but that's my vague
I
idea.
don't remember that, so I was like, when did that start? Because I know when we were there, it was the same thing all
Yeah.
over and,
If you have allergies, it's.
oh, yeah, yeah.
My husband had COPD, and when he went to his father's funeral at the Russian Orthodox.
Oh,
So he needs a
Yeah.
lot of incense, he had to stand outside.
oh, because this, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
strong.
According to Google,
Oh, yes, oh, okay, all right, tell me, yeah.
the incense symbolizes prayers rising to heaven.
Oh,
The smoke, commonly used in Catholic, Orthodox,
And when did it
Anglo-Catholic
start?
churches.
did it have anything, did Google answer my question?
Doesn't say when,
Yeah.
but it might have been have a dual purpose.
Yeah, or multiple purposes. I remember in college, it was used to cover the smell of marijuana.
Yeah, there's a lot of incense.
Or just use the marijuana.
Oh, my God.
Oh, one other thing it brought up, I think Saint Denis Church had figures on the facade, just the way Notre Dame did. And Notre Dame's figure, all these churches were built to tell a story, basically, and tie the present king or creator of the church in with that history. So I think both Saint Denis and Notre Dame had all the kings of Israel arrayed across with Notre Dame across the west facade. And in the Revolution, the mobs thought that these kings of Israel were actually statues of the kings of France. They were wrong, but they cut off the heads of all the statues.
That's right.
And they were buried in somebody's backyard in the 1960s. Somebody found them.
Yeah, I remember that story. It was crazy. It was so crazy.
And Saint Denis itself has just been totally gutted time after time over the years. But it still is a place where, partly through restoration, it's where all the kings of France are buried, and all the queens of France were crowned there. And I haven't seen that yet. I've made 3 trips to Paris, and I still haven't gotten up to Saint Denis.
For me, it was one of these connecting the dots of like, duh, Notre Dame, which we've all heard about all our lives, but celebrating the Virgin Mary. I didn't make that connection, that this church was done in her honor. Did you guys know?
Which
that?
one, Notre Dame?
Notre
Notre
Dame.
Dame,
I mean, it's
Our,
on
our,
Lady.
our Lady.
Oh, okay, yeah, Dame.
I had-
Makes sense.
What I did.
It was in 1978. I visited the Gulf.
Interesting how much change from 78 to now.
Yeah, well, if you go down to Marseille, the huge church cathedral on top of the hill on the east side of Marseille is also Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of Notre Dame.
Here's a name that we all associate with football, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And here it is.
Some of us. Yeah, some, yeah.
Why? What does it have to do with football?
I read a book a couple of years ago about the heyday of the Ku Klux Klan in Indiana. And who was it? Eric Larson?
Timothy Egan.
Timothy Egan.
Yeah,
That's right.
Timothy Egan.
And a Klan mob decided it would be a good thing because they didn't like Catholics to go out and burn out Notre Dame. But the students heard about it, and when the Klan boys in their robes came marching up the street, the students poured out of the campus and beat the crap out of them, which is where they got the term the Fighting Irish.
When was that?
Wow, when was that?
Why is it Irish?
1920s.
20s, 30s? Oh my gosh.
That's a
Holy
great
cow.
story.
That's quite a book.
What's the book?
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember the
Yeah.
name of it, but it's
Something
quite.
in the Heartland or something?
Fever in the Heartland.
Fever in the Heart.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Timothy Egan.
Sobering.
Yeah, wow.
Just amazing how they've taken over the entire governmental structure of the state of Indiana and other states as well.
Almost became a presidential nominee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Couldn't happen again, could it?
I don't mean to move the conversation away from architecture and the light and those things. I have a comment. I was really struck by the story about the burning of the Talmuds,
Yes.
and the description that I just found this really moving and I guess clarifying about a lot of things that have happened in the world. It's mostly on page 192, excuse me. But they say, our familiar face, Augustine, had argued long ago that the Jews' subservient status proved Christianity's truth. Okay, so you make them subservient, and that proves that you're right and they're wrong. That history had demonstrated by the destruction of the Israelite temple and rise of Christianity that God's plan for the world was punishment for the Jews' failure to accept Jesus. For medieval Christians, Jews needed to be reminded of their subservience, often through violence, harassment, segregation, and sometimes assault and murder. So having the trial, the point of that description is having the trial was sort of useless. It was a foregone conclusion what the result of the trial was going to be,
Yeah.
but they phonied up a trial like has happened.
Right.
other cases. So, but that description of the relationship between Jews and Christians, I found really sort of enlightening.
I found it surprising. I was thinking Jews' subservient status. I mean,
Well,
That we learned some of that, I think, in the first 1,000 years, where wasn't it? Oh, maybe I'm getting it confused with the Muslims. Where I guess it was the Muslims. They took over, and the Christians were allowed to stay, but they had to pay a tax.
Yeah, that was.
yeah.
Right. But this raises another thought that's been working in my mind as we go through this secular history. They did touch briefly on the Inquisition in one of the earlier chapters, but after that, no mention at all. And it strikes me, for us who are interested in church history, we ought to at least remember that that is starting here with, remember the persecution of the Cathars,
Yeah.
with the church appointing the Pope appointing the Dominican order to be the, what is it, the hounds of?
Yeah, the hounds of the Lord. Dominicans, hounds of the Lord.
And so in all of these countries, Spain, France, up north into Flanders, I mean, the Inquisition is going on through all this that we're reading about. And what a scene that was. I mean, just thousands of people who were. You would be interested, Gene, if you haven't already seen it. They had a script for their Inquisition trials. The Dominicans would follow. It's quite a clever bit of legal work. I mean, it was designed to elicit answers that would basically fry the defendant regardless of which way it went. Very ingenious. And so they did literally fry them after finding them guilty of heresy, after torturing them. So, but that's part of the church history. We shouldn't be ignoring while this is going on. And there's a postscript. Actually, it probably comes up in next week's time period, but it's connected very much to what we're talking about here. There was a major movement of women in Belgium, Flanders, northern France, called the Beguines. And they lived like nuns in communities, simple dress, very, very pious Christians. The thing about them was that they weren't subject to the authority of the local bishop or the church. They were persecuted. One of their leaders was Marguerite Porret, who was a rich woman, very well-read, and wrote a tract that was found by the local bishop to be heretical. And so the Bishop of Paris caught her and had her burned at the stake. But the Beguine community continued on, actually, in a few places into the 20th century. But they were very soundly suppressed, beginning in 1300s, I think.
Back to Gene's point on the persecution and discrimination on the Jews. I found that really interesting as well. And I don't know about you guys, but my frame of reference in terms of persecution of the Jewish people really starts with the Holocaust and all the terrible things that went on in Germany in World War II, etc. And then as you begin to peel the back a bit, you see that this discrimination and poor treatment was throughout, at least European history and maybe elsewhere. I mean, you go back and back and back. And now in the first book that we read, and now this book, we see more. We go further and further and find that this persecution, this poor treatment, this discrimination was throughout history. But what I found so telling about the book here is what Jean read about Jews' punishment for not accepting Jesus. And so for me, all this discrimination and terrible treatment, religious leaders found a scripture-based reason for it. They justified it. And like many wars that we've read about, that they found a reason, a biblical reason, scripture-based reason to justify the Crusades, to justify the treatment of heretics. And so once again here we have a religious-based reason for taking action. And I found that very sobering, that how our religion has been used to justify terrible things.
And take a step back, I mean, and just consider for a moment the contrast between Jesus' original message, which basically boils down to love your neighbor, and what these characters competing for power and glory and everything are dishing out, just in the name of Jesus, basically. And it's just...
I couldn't understand the logic of burning the Talmud. I mean, that's the first, I mean, that's got the creation story and stuff, so I couldn't understand why they wanted to destroy that.
It's got more than that. It's full of commentary over the centuries.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. And that might be what they consider heretical, rather than the biblical stories.
Yeah, or maybe it was just heretical because it was a thing of the Jews.
Yeah, well,
Christians.
except that, Christianity accepted the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And so I looked up the Talmud the other day to see what's actually in it. It's, hundreds of years of commentary by learned rabbis, and it's commentary to commentary, And so later on, somebody will comment on this, and, like we have on social media.
Yeah.
So it's not just the first 5 books?
No.
Okay.
Does it also constitute some sort of system of laws?
I think so, but it's based on, I think it's the Torah that you're thinking of.
The Torah is the one with
Yeah.
the creation story. Yeah, Torah, Talmud.
Yeah, that's okay. I just saw a building that I said, oh, they painted it gray, and Tom said, well, they did that months ago, so.
But that's why I looked up Talmud to see what was actually in it.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. Yeah, that's helpful.
I always put them.
So I totally understand what you're talking about. My quick thought about Nazism, I mean, yeah, that's where we start thinking about it, is that if you're going to blame somebody, you got to blame an outsider group. So they were already an outsider group.
Right.
They just were able to blame them for everything, like we're now blaming immigrants for everything. They've always been a part of our fabric, but now we're blaming them for everything because everything's falling apart, right? And we've got anyway. So, but what was really ironic about this is that it was Christian leaders finding that the document, the book, the Talmud, was heretical from a Jewish standpoint, that it violated Jewish rules. So that was, I mean, that's what it says here. It said they didn't say Christians shouldn't be reading the Talmud. They said the Talmud should be burned. It's heretical even within its own religion. But they didn't, but it was Christians doing it, Christians and I guess kings, but so whatever the relationship was that month between them. But so it's really makes it even more important, I think, to understand that first paragraph, that this was a piece of the Christian establishment making sure that the Jews were kept in check.
Yeah.
But the persecution of the Jews had gone on for hundreds of years before the Holocaust. I mean, the pogroms in Russia and Poland
Yeah.
and Hungary and just about any other place that's been going on for a long time.
Didn't we read in the first 1,000 years, I don't mean to hijack this and talking about the relationship between Christians and Jews, but didn't we read in the first 1,000 years that the Jews were doing okay in Rome before the Christians showed up? And the Christians sort of started stirring up this one God thing that put the Jews in an awkward situation. That's my recollection.
Right.
I think so.
And Joe's over there thinking, there's so much more to it than that.
So this sort of brings us into the next chapter. I don't know if it's the same King Louis. It is the same King Louis as we've been talking about with Sainte-Chapelle. He had just gone down to Egypt in the last 7th crusade, and which was a big nothing. Basically, his big army that was supposed to start in Egypt and get to Jerusalem ran into Saladin in Egypt and ran into disease at the same time, and their basic plan faltered right from the get-go. So they went back to France, and that's when he built Sainte-Chapelle, I think. But that failure led to them looking for another way to combat Islam, and the Mongols were coming from the east in hordes, the Mongol hordes, Genghis Khan.
Yeah, there he is.
Yeah, and they weren't Muslims, they weren't Christians, they had their own local religions, I guess, but they weren't strongly inclined one way or the other. So both the Pope and Philip had the bright idea to send some missionaries to visit the Mongols and see if they could convert them in the first place, and also see if they couldn't enlist them to attack the Muslims, because they knew that they had a very good army. So they sent the missionaries, and
Barefooted.
around 1250, as I say, both the Pope and the King, and the missionaries didn't have very good success in converting the Mongols. In fact, there's this great paragraph here how they the Pope made his demand, or the Pope made his demand to Genghis Khan, convert to Christianity or I'll wipe you out. And Genghis Khan or the Khan, whoever it was, getting the message said, "Oh yeah, well, I'm coming to get you, but I'm going to wipe you out."
Yeah.
Look out the window.
And eventually, Genghis Khan's descendants, his children that had taken over their own separate territories throughout his conquered territory, most of them converted to Islam eventually. But that came later. I think these missionaries just basically didn't have much success. But in the age of the internet, it's also interesting that in the lack of any real success in enlisting the Mongols, they made up this character, Prester John.
Yes, what was that all about?
He was supposed to be a subordinate of Genghis Khan with his own kingdom and his own very big army and very rich. And Prester John was going to be the one to come and take care of the Muslims. It's really funny. I have this book that I remembered from college. It's this is the Travels of Sir John Mandeville, and this is from 1400s, I think. But he incorporates the messages written down by these missionaries 100 years, or a couple hundred years before. And this book includes the actual messages of William of Rubric, one of the missionaries, and they're interesting to read in their original language. I don't know if William or I think it was one of the other ones describing the court of Prester John. All this made up, you know.
Jesus.
But it sounds, the way he describes it, the court of Prester John was a whole lot like Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, wow.
It's,
Oh my God.
I should have marked it out so I could read it to you, but I can't find it right now. But yeah, the whole thing just fabricated, and the legend of Prester John went on for years. Nobody knew quite where he was
Where
located.
he was and when he was gonna pop up
Right.
and get you. That's amazing. I just can't think. It's really a fake person? They really did that? You know.
There are pictures in here too, woodcuts from the Middle Ages of what Prester John looked like.
Oh, ooh.
You can look at it after what we're done.
Interesting, yeah.
It's pretty
The
much.
original AI
And
photos.
the thing about the book of Prester John Mandeville is a made-up character. It's a travelogue basically, and it starts out very realistically describing the culture, the peoples of Western Europe, pretty accurately. But then, as the character moves beyond the bounds of Europe into these unknown places, the characters and the monsters start getting more and more fantastical. By the time he makes it into the southern hemisphere, there are people there with feet growing out of the top of their heads. It's too much.
Wait.
But the author's point is, regardless of the religious implications, Genghis Khan's empire actually did open up the lines of communication between Europe and the East, that these missionaries and traders and all sorts of people were utilizing. And the interest in what was in the East picked up quite a bit in Europe. So it had that good influence, I guess you could say, a source of light. Oh, and that, by the way, that's the source of light for this chapter, is the sun glistening off the snow steppes of Central Asia, freezing the toes off the
Toes and
missionary.
barefoot. Oh my God.
You gotta get your light where you can get it.
So I was struck by, again, as an old history major, how short I was falling, because there are some characters here and concepts that I heard of, but I had no context for them. For example, Genghis Khan, I kind of heard about Genghis Khan, but I had no real sense for the context. And then Marco Polo shows up. You know, we all played Marco Polo in the swimming pool, right? But I had no sense for where he fit in. And then the Silk Road, which we hear a lot about in music and all kinds of things today. But here was I don't know whether it emerged during this time or whether it was always there and they just built it up. But the great travel routes and trade routes of that time, and the role that the Mongol Empire played in supporting that. And then, you know, we'll see in the next chapter the role that it played in the Great Black Plague, Black Death, in terms of the movement of people and disease.
Both along the Silk Road, and at this point they were sailing to China and everything, and sailing back again. So it came into the ports like in Marseille. Yeah. So that's what we get next.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of loop back to the last chapter and talk about the role of universities for a second, because that was interesting to me. I mean, I'm an old city guy, and so trying to think of what makes a city. And you know, clearly, when we see with Paris the emergence of a great city that we can relate to, clearly trade and commerce and all that kind of stuff is helpful for a city. But we've been reading how important the church is in cities, the building of cathedrals and the like. But now we have a new player, I think, in the role of universities.
Oh, right, with a tie-in to the church, the
Yeah.
way the authors describe it.
As I understood it here, that before this, to get educated, one went to a monastery. That's where I think the primary education. Now, which is out in the hinterland somewhere. But now, the universities are being brought into cathedrals and other church-related things in the city. So, and then the tension that became between church and state and the universities, and that it sounds like the university actually became independent after a while. Stuff we kind of take for granted, or at least we did until this administration, about the
Yeah.
independence of universities.
Well, became independent with the help of the Pope, actually.
Yeah.
This description of these two bar fights that occurred a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
After the first one, the king saved the university from justice. And in the second one, the king had turned around and tried to expel the university, and the Pope said, no, you can't do that.
Because at one point, the students and the faculty all left, right? They left Paris.
Right,
And
yeah.
oh my God, now you want them back on that?
Right. Remember, last week also, or the week before, we were told there was a school starting up connected with Notre Dame, and the Bishop of Paris, I think it was, decided that they were teaching Aristotle, and that shouldn't be happening. So he said, no teaching Aristotle, but the University of Toulouse or something like that kept on teaching Aristotle, which turned into an attraction and to the detriment of Notre Dame. So eventually Notre Dame came around and started teaching Aristotle.
So anyway, the role, and now we have, besides church and state, we now have education as another pillar of the community, of the power structure, something to fight over, whatever. So, you were struck with that?
Yeah.
But also to offer enlightenment
Yeah.
at universities.
We should also keep track of the role of women in this. Remember last week we had, who was it? It was Hildegard of Bingen ran into trouble because she was in direct communication with God via her visions, but that didn't run through the local bishop, so he got after her. Now we have the Beguines that I'm talking about, same thing. Joan of Arc, you remember, had visions, and she's burned as a witch.
And there was another woman in here who was burned at the stake. In this,
Yes.
the second chapter. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's a continuing theme. I mean, the local bishops didn't tolerate anybody going around them.
Yeah.
Maybe you're, are you thinking of the Catholics? No.
Money, money, money.
I don't know.
I can't remember.
So here we are now, now we're headed into the plague years, the Black Death. And goodness knows where they're gonna find the source of life in that.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
I don't know if you've read that yet, I haven't, but it wipes out like half the population of Europe, basically. doesn't it?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Over several different plagues. So I read about that recently, a couple of years ago, and because I was asking whether the plague still existed. It still does exist. the thing is that we have penicillin, you know, so, you can still die from it if you don't get treated.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's still transmitted, I think, through rodents. and
Well, and fleas.
Fleas
that-
from the
That come
rodents.
off fleas,
Yeah, yeah. Apparently there is also aerosol transmission, you know, people coughing and sneezing, but that doesn't spread it as fast as the fleas
Yeah.
spread it.
Good. I was thinking of back to the university a second, the interesting story the other day that Amazon, now that it's shrinking a bit, is no longer the largest employer in Seattle. So who is the largest employer in
UW.
Seattle?
University.
University of
Is
Washington.
that right?
University of Washington. It says they got 50,000 people or something.
Yeah.
Well, when you think of all their fingers, I mean, there are university campuses everywhere, so.
But this is just in Seattle.
Yeah.
Oh, I assume that was
Number of
all their
employees in
employees.
Yeah, but employees, I guess, yeah. But I was thinking about that in context of this, of here we see the origins of a major university. Things we take for granted now, but how did they get started?
Well, it was the biggest before. Amazon overtook it, now it's coming back.
I don't know when the university in Paris separated from Notre Dame. I mean, they went over to the left bank a long time ago. That must have been part of their separation from Notre Dame, moving physically.
In the first book, I think I was struck with the role that religion played in the intellectual development of society. Something I
Totally.
never really understood. And even here now, the church and the university maybe have fought and over things, but it was basically a church-based institution originally.
yeah.
Yeah, so whether it started in the monasteries and then came to the cathedrals, the religion, the church, played a role in the intellectual development of the time. So I found that.
And you still have a lot of Christian, related, universities and colleges.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them, like Yale and Harvard, are kind of separated, but there's still all these little schools.
Yeah.
Didn't one of these authors, before he went to Minnesota or before he went to Virginia Tech, I forget which one it was a professor at a small Dominican university in Minnesota?
Yeah. The book references that when some of the students and faculty left Paris because of the dispute, they went to Oxford. Which,
Yeah.
you know, the great University of Oxford, which again was, I believe, started to train preachers, religious people out of there, or the wealthy family sent their sons. Like women went to the University of Paris. They brought. I'm not talking about Oxford, but again, the church, great university with religious foundations.
Which continued into our time. Harvard started out as a place to train preachers. Congregationalists.
So I had a thought about the first 1,000 years and then the next 500 or whatever we're doing, about how it's the Dark Ages and who named it, or how it got its name as the Dark Ages. And I know it was, a lot of it is because of the part of the plague, the killing, but I'm wondering how much difference, because we're reading stories of all the atrocities of the wars and the wipeouts of this village, and now there were so many in the first 1,000 years too. I mean, wiping out here and there, and I'm wondering if there was more communication, more, just news and things it was easier to spread that kind of news back from 100 or 200 or 400. So I'm just wondering if there was more realization of all the killings and wipings out in the first, that 500 years than there were in the first 100.
Do you mean after we got these new ways to communicate? People started putting things together and
Yeah, but I was
realized
thinking
what
of that after the year 1000 or 1100, it seems like there was a lot more communication because peoples were coming and going all over the place. And well, this is what's happening, this is what's happening. But way back when, they didn't have that kind of information.
The last paragraph, or the last chapter, in the end, refers to this, because it says, regardless, editions of Marco Polo's travels spread rapidly, translated into myriad tongues. European interest and knowledge about Asia, and stand as one example of European travelers to the east. So people move, but that's what it's referring to. So they did start to travel more and communicate
more, and maybe not, but it just seemed like, there were so many icky things going on that first 1000 years too, but they were semi-dark.
Yeah, because they just had, they developed these roads and these ways of travel.
Right.
But then they were able to communicate things more.
The authors just sort of put it all together. I mean, they brush over it very lightly, but
Right.
Genghis Khan was pretty savage.
Oh, yeah.
Himself.
Yeah, true.
Caused I don't know how many deaths in his travels. But they point out at the same time it's increasing the communication. Wow. Tough to swallow.
I don't know the answer, but I'm just thinking of how we've evolved to improving things, like still they use ships, but maybe the ships were faster, and then therefore the news traveled faster, or maybe they figured out how to move overland faster. It's just a matter of a week, 2 weeks, things. Before you know it, the news is relatively tiny.
I mean, it used to take two years to go over here, and then
Right.
later and later, they were finding the ships, the way they built them, and said, they could get there in 2 days, or.
Right. Oh, I think that here, I think the authors point out on the Silk Road.
Yeah.
Genghis Khan set up a system, sort of like the Pony Express. There were fresh horses everywhere along the way, so you could get across the whole breadth of Asia in a few weeks.
So with the fresh horses, you can imagine how quickly news could travel.
Yeah.
You get a fresh horse. It would be interesting on sailing ships, the technology, how much did it evolve over those 500 years? It'd be interesting.
Yeah,
just.
Well, even in my time, when I was in the freight business.
Speaking of history.
Yeah, history, I'm about
as
far
old as
back in
Sally.
history as they go in here.
They're both.
Anyway, when I was in the freight business, it took a week to get a boxcar from New York to Seattle. 1 week. In the meantime, the billing would come out and we'd have the billing, but it took 2 or 3 days to get that all done. Now it's bing, 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 and you're in Seattle practically in 2 nights.
Right.
And same thing in Atlanta, Georgia. We had a shoe account, and they were up. They'd leave on Friday night, and they were here Monday morning. So,
You do it at Amazon Prime, you have tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Or later tonight.
Yeah.
I think computers made a huge difference.
Yeah, but Dan, your point, well, Kevin, stuff that we take for granted today about just how news travels, we get it like that.
Yeah.
It just,
well, They didn't have computers when I first
A
started.
week, a month, 2 months, 3
Yeah,
months,
yeah,
6
years,
months?
yeah,
How did news travel?
yeah.
And was it fake news?
Well,
Yeah.
how much did it, like, well, I'll tell you and he'll tell Todd, but by the time it gets to you, that's not what I told him, and it's,
Yeah.
the story changes.
Gene, you can say that?
I'm just thinking about, we used to say a picture's worth 1,000 words. You can write all about it, but if you get a picture, that's it. But now that's not even true.
Yeah.
Because pictures are doctored.
Yeah, when I started practicing law, I mean, you take
Yeah, if
a
you had a photo.
glossy into court, and that
Yeah.
was gold, solid gold
Yeah.
as evidence.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
who knows?
Who knows
So-
what it
I was
is.
just gonna say, jingoism has always been a problem.
What?
I mean, jingoism has always been a problem, misinformation.
Yeah.
We got into the Spanish-American War because of it. But even so, like, my dad, he used to be a propaganda person for the Pentagon. And one of the things he wanted me to read was a book called First Casualty. And it's about jingoism. And the very first quote was, "The first casualty of war is always the truth."
Yeah.
And, yeah, so it's always been an issue. Misinformation has always been an issue. I think we just have to figure out that we have to develop that discernment. And I think the discernment, the critical thinking skills and the researching skills are kind of lacking nowadays. I think that's probably one problem. How do you defend against it?
And then yesterday, the New York Times published all these pictures of supposedly the war in Iran, that they had big red slashes through them. They had determined that they were all AI. There were
Yeah,
like tons of them.
Is that right?
And they were all spread through social media.
Yeah.
By the way, this reminds me
That's our
of,
property in the south of Lebanon.
Yeah.
We have so many properties.
Well, that's the
This
thing, my
week-
dad.
Now,
Well, that's a different
It's
thing.
done.
I watch the news.
this reminds me of the war with Iran, reminds me of, we read about how the missionaries, one of the things that they did is rediscover their long-lost cousins, the Nestorians,
Yeah.
who'd been sort of shuffled off to the east by the Byzantines 500 years previously, but they were still there, still operating in the court of the Khan and everything. And I was looking the other day at this Karg Island in the northern Persian
Yeah.
Gulf, because that's, mark my words, the Marines will be invading Karg Island on Friday, I calculate. But I looked at the satellite picture of Karg Island, right in the middle, there's a ruins of a Nestorian church.
Oh.
Really?
It says on the map.
Interesting.
I doubt that they will respect that.
No, they won't.
this is a fact. Our property, we have many properties in south of Lebanon. We went, and my daughter-in-law, her family were in their property. They had to move to Beirut, and everything was demolished. So we don't have any summer house. We used to go there in the summer. We had orchards there, they're gone. And the Israelis confiscated everything. They're going to build settlements in the south of Lebanon. This is a fact. This is news that I know about my family in Lebanon.
When the Germans invaded Northern Ireland, people left before, people did before they left, because if they didn't, so they bury stuff, somewhere or whatever, bury and then they burn them.
Okay, so stay tuned for next week. We're gonna have the last chapters and the epilogue.
All of
We're
this.
gonna cover it all.
Okay.
I will be gone next week, but I'll do my homework. I'm gonna be in hot Phoenix, it's gonna be over 100 degrees.
108 degrees coming up for the baseball game?
We're not going to spring training, forget that.
So anyway, the chapter, as Philly was saying, is going to feature Black Death, the plague, which we get a lot of the Dark Ages from, that notion. But just in terms of the religious overtones, of course, people are asking why, and why is this happening to us? And the apocalypse is back in terms of, you could imagine if you had some sense about the apocalypse coming, boy, all the writing was on the wall as people are literally dying all around you. So it's a very challenging time. And I must confess, I read that chapter. Brings back some memories of our recent history with the pandemic here. So it'll be interesting, your thoughts on. I was, and I'm giving you a preview, but I was just struck by, I say, how modern their reaction was compared to ours. I mean, they had a lot of the same, according to the authors, a lot of the same feelings and wondering that we did during it. I found their approach, trying to find out why and what to do about it, how to prevent it, all that kind of stuff. I found them remarkably progressive further. They didn't have much science or medicine to base it on, but they certainly were not just sitting around and letting it happen to them. They were trying to figure out why and what to do about it.
Part of your homework for next week should be to watch last night's Saturday Night Live sketch about MAHA, Make America Healthy Again Hospital.
That's hysterical.
I have it on my.
It's a takeoff on the pit. With Robert Kennedy in charge of the ER.
So, next week we'll kind of wrap up this book. This, just for a little bit of context, we started this discussion about history, not really knowing how much people were going to go to it, but the three people who led those discussions did a great job, and we moved through that first 1,000 years. And then there was talk of, well, okay, we want to keep this going. We're appreciating this look back, and I think it's not hard to understand that in these days. How the heck did we get where we are? Where the Christian church now is the Christian right and all of this stuff. How did that happen? And so we're looking backwards for answers. There was conversation as we were wrapping up the first 1,000 years of moving into the Reformation. Let's stay with this history. We want to keep learning it. It's great. And what's the next thing? Well, maybe it's the Reformation. So there was some conversation around that, and we ended up with this book first. I hear about the Renaissance. I hear about the Reformation. I'm not an expert in any of this stuff. I was not a history major in college. I've lived a lot of history. So we're coming up on Easter. We're gonna take a break from this history study. At the same time, maybe next week, if you're here, we can have a little bit of conversation about where people are thinking we might go next. It still needs to be tuned up, but that's a thing. If you're not able to be here next week, maybe you have some thoughts about that and you could share them otherwise. So I'm speaking as the chair of the Christian Ed Committee at this point. So that, just wanted to throw that thought out there for you.
And maybe if you're aware of a particularly good book about the Renaissance or the Reformation.
And we do have some resources. We've mentioned Joe's friend, who's a religious history professor at Gonzaga, and we'll be back in touch with her, maybe get some ideas and whatnot. So just And maybe, I don't anticipate this, but maybe people would say, okay, we've done enough of that. I want to study what we're doing today. I want to know more about Christian nationalism, whatever. So we don't want to put together another program of old time history and then find out that nobody shows up. So let us know that too, please.
I do have a book suggestion for like if you want to